Let me guess, you visualize every morning, you script your desires, repeat your affirmations, and try to stay in alignment. You're doing everything they told you to do, and yet, when you look around, your life is a painful echo of the one you're trying to leave behind. What if I told you the reason has nothing to do with your effort, and everything to do with an invisible signal you're broadcasting 24/7? What if all the manifestation techniques you've learned are practically useless, unless you first understand the one fundamental law of the quantum field actually obeys? It doesn't respond to your vision board, your positive thoughts, or how badly you want something. It responds to the energy you embody when you're not even trying. And today, we're going to decode that signal. Have you ever felt like you're living in a loop? A different year, but the same problems. A new relationship, but the same old patterns. Why, despite our best intentions, do we keep repeating our past? The answer isn't in your actions. It's in your frequency. There's a law of vibrational repetition keeping you stuck. And once you understand it, you can finally break free. You're doing everything they told you to do. You wake up and visualize your dream life with pristine clarity. You script your deepest desires in a pristine journal. You repeat your affirmations with conviction. You meditate. You try to stay in alignment. And you speak in what you hope are high vibrations. You tell yourself, and anyone who will listen, that you trust the universe. Yet, when you take a quiet, honest look around, your reality looks painfully, stubbornly familiar. Different months, but the same underlying emotions. New intentions, but the same old outcomes. You wonder why, despite all this monumental effort, the relationships you attract still feel like distorted versions of the ones you're trying to escape. Your financial situation seems to hit a ceiling and then reset. No matter how hard you push, your inner world oscillates between moments of bright hope and a quiet, creeping despair. And underneath all of this spiritual work, a single question begins to echo, growing louder and louder in the silence. What am I doing wrong? Why does my life feel like a loop I can't break? Here is the truth, and I want you to receive this with your whole heart. It's not you. It's not a flaw in your worth, your potential, or your intelligence. It's not even about your effort. It is about your frequency. The quantum field, the great mirror of reality, doesn't respond to effort. It doesn't respond to how badly you want something. It doesn't tally up the number of hours you visualize, the intensity of your affirmations, or the amount of positive vibes you try to consciously cultivate. The quantum field responds to one thing, and one thing only: the signal you broadcast consistently and unconsciously. Beneath the surface of everything you say and do, it's the vibration you embody when no one is looking, when you stop performing, when you're not actively trying to manifest. You see, you're not stuck because you're failing at manifestation. You're stuck because you haven't yet stopped vibrating like the version of yourself you've already outgrown. And until that old, familiar vibration dissolves, the field will faithfully, impeccably keep reflecting it back to you, not out of cruelty, but out of perfect, unwavering coherence. The quantum field is neutral. It doesn't judge your desires as good or bad. worthy or unworthy. It simply mirrors the energetic reality that you, on the deepest level, hold as true. This is why, no matter how many new vision boards you create, how many guided meditations you follow, or how many spiritual books you read, your life can still feel eerily, frustratingly the same. It is not personal, it is physics. There's a law you weren't taught in school, but it governs your entire reality, the law of vibrational repetition. Whatever your subconscious mind believes is safe, it recreates, and safe does not mean happy, fulfilled, or expanded. Safe simply means familiar. Your subconscious listens to the vibration of familiarity as if it were a direct command. It says, this feeling of struggle, this expectation of disappointment, this is what you feel most often. This is the version of reality you are energetically stabilized in. Understood? I will keep reinforcing that. And so it does. Again and again. You don't manifest from your vision board. You manifest from your nervous system. You manifest from the energy you emit when you're not even thinking about manifestation. You manifest when you're just living your life, reacting to traffic, processing stress, handling disappointment, celebrating a small win, or grieving a loss. You manifest from the subtle tone of your faults when you're alone late at night, from the way you truly feel about yourself when things don't go as planned, from the energy you hold in the silent spaces between your conscious efforts. This is the very reason people repeat the same cycles, because even when the outer behaviors change, the habits, the routines, the rituals, the inner vibrational baseline remains completely untouched. You can chant the word abundance 100 times a day, but if your body, your very cells, are still wired for the familiar feeling of scarcity and lack, the field doesn't hear the word, it hears the vibration, and it responds accordingly. Most people, in their frustration, believe the field is punishing them or that they are somehow blocked. But what if this feedback loop isn't a sign that you're broken? What if it's not proof that you're unworthy, or evidence that you're bad at manifesting? What if it's just a mirror, a precise, unflinching, vibrational mirror? And mirrors don't lie, they don't judge, they just reflect. So, what if the real work isn't about chasing after a new reality with more techniques, more tools, more books, more courses? What if, instead, you became so energetically coherent that you allowed the field to reflect something entirely new? What if the work isn't about adding more on top, but about dissolving the old frequencies that keep looping in the background of your life, like an invisible code dictating your experiences without your conscious consent? Because here is the raw reality. You cannot out-affirm your energetic baseline. You cannot manifest a higher reality while your body is still anchored in the emotional patterns and vibrational habits of your past. You cannot expand into your future self while still gripping onto the same old stories, the same self-perceptions, and the same frequency signatures that defined who you were. The loop continues, not because you're not trying hard enough, but because you're still repeating the same vibrational signature. Even with new actions, you're performing a new morning routine, but with the same old undercurrent of anxiety, you're repeating new mantras, but with the same residual self-doubt. You're taking new actions, but carrying the same old energetic posture of someone who expects things to be difficult. And the field, in its perfection, picks up on the undercurrent as the dominant signal and reflects it back with relentless consistency. This is the root of quantum repetition. The field isn't resisting your desires. It's reflecting your identity, and your identity isn't what you say it is. It's what your frequency says it is. It's the sum total of what you expect, what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you settle into when nobody's watching, when the rituals are over, and it's just you, alone with your energy. So, if you truly want to stop repeating the same reality, you have to stop repeating the same frequency. And to do that, you must first become exquisitely aware of what you've been unconsciously looping, emotionally, mentally, and vibrationally, because until you interrupt that loop, you're not manifesting a new life, you're just redecorating the old one with prettier words, shinier tools, and more sophisticated techniques. But here is where the shift begins. The moment you become aware of the loop, the moment you can name it, observe it, and feel it without collapsing into it, you gain the power to consciously step out of it. That is the true essence of a quantum shift, not forcing a new reality into being, but becoming a new frequency, so the reality that is a perfect match to it collapses effortlessly around you. And that is exactly what we are going to explore together in this video. In the next section, you're going to discover how your subconscious mind creates these powerful vibrational echoes that perpetuate the same experiences. You understand why your mind resists change even when your soul is craving it. And you learn the missing key to creating a new reality, not through more effort, but through deeper resonance. We're not just talking theory here. We're talking about transformation, deep, lasting, vibrationally real transformation. So take a breath. Feel the old frequency begin to loosen its grip. Let the patterns you've outgrown start to dissolve in the vast, open space of your awareness. And get ready, because in the next section, you are going to see exactly how your energy has been looping, and precisely how to break the cycle. Let's go deeper. You now understand that what's repeating is not your fate, it's your frequency. But how does this mechanism actually work beneath the surface? How do your subconscious mind, your nervous system, and the quantum field collaborate so perfectly to keep you experiencing the same reality again and again? Even when, consciously, you are pleading for something else. It all starts with this simple, biological truth. Your subconscious mind is not designed to make you happy. It is designed to keep you safe, and for the subconscious, safe does not mean fulfilled. Safe does not mean expanded. Safe means familiar. Your subconscious holds the sum total of all your past experiences, your learned beliefs, your traumas, and your emotional responses, all wired together through years, perhaps lifetimes, of reinforcement. These patterns create what neuroscientists call neural pathways, deeply etched grooves of thought, feeling, and behavior that eventually become automatic, effortless, and entirely unconscious. Your nervous system then takes these pathways and memorizes them as your body's default settings. How you respond to stress, how you experience love, how you handle money, how you perceive opportunities, how you process rejection. All of these patterns form a vibrational blueprint that your body emits 24/7. Even when your conscious mind is focused on something else entirely. And here is the catch that explains everything. The quantum field responds to that blueprint. Not to your fleeting intentions, not to your hopeful wishes, not to the words you speak out loud, but to the frequency you are most consistently broadcasting, your dominant vibrational signature. And the vast, overwhelming majority of that signature is unconscious, emitted from your body's automatic responses, your habitual emotions, your reflexive thoughts, and your default self-perception. This is why conscious change feels so incredibly hard, because when you try to manifest something new, you are often doing it from within the very same subconscious program that created the current reality you're so desperate to escape. It's like trying to write a new, brilliant story with the same old, tired script running in the background, constantly auto-correcting every new word you type back to what it used to be. Let's bring in quantum physics for a moment to make this even clearer. In the quantum model, reality exists as a vast field of infinite possibilities, each potential reality, one where you are healthy, one where you are struggling, one where you are in love, exists as a wave of probability. But those probabilities do not collapse into physical form until there is observation, intention, and, most importantly, coherence. Coherence is the powerful alignment of your energy across all levels: mental, emotional, physical, and vibrational. Without coherence, your signal to the universe is scattered, weak, and inconsistent, and a scattered signal can never override a long-standing, deeply ingrained frequency. Here is where most people get stuck. They try to force change from the level of conscious thought, not realizing that their subconscious programming is still broadcasting the same old signal at a much more powerful and consistent amplitude. Neuroscience tells us that up to 95% of our daily thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are unconscious, habitual patterns. Think about that. That means, at best, only 5% of your energy is actively participating in creating something new, while a staggering 95% is automatically reinforcing what already exists. This is why, despite your best efforts to think positively or stay in a high vibration, you may find yourself attracting the same kinds of relationships, the same financial challenges, or the same emotional experiences. Your subconscious mind is still wired for those old patterns, and your body is still emitting the familiar frequency of those past experiences, creating a powerful magnetic field that effortlessly draws in more of the same. In quantum terms, your conscious focus may be on your desired reality, but your vibration, your embodied, energetic frequency, is still entangled with the reality you're trying to leave behind. The quantum field responds not to what you want, but to what you are, and what you are is determined largely by the subconscious patterns you haven't yet interrupted. Let's make this even more practical. Think about the last time you tried to make a big, meaningful change in your career, your relationships, or your health. What happened? Most likely, you felt excited and motivated at first, ready to take on the world. But then, inevitably, resistance crept in, self-doubt surfaced, old fears re-emerged. You started to procrastinate. You found clever ways to self-sabotage. You found perfectly logical reasons to delay. That wasn't random. That was your subconscious mind doing its job, trying to pull you back into the familiar, into what it knows, into what feels safe. Even if that safety is painful, your body plays a crucial role here. Dr. Joe Dispenza often says that the body is the subconscious mind. Your body has chemically memorized the feelings, the stress responses, and the emotional habits that define your current identity. And every time you try to shift into a new state of being, your body resists, not because it wants to hurt you, but because it has been conditioned to keep you within the known parameters of your old self. The body craves predictability, and so it generates thoughts, emotions, and impulses, all designed to pull you back into the familiar loop. This is the complete mechanism of quantum repetition. Your subconscious programming creates a consistent vibrational field. The quantum field perfectly mirrors that field back to you as your reality. And your experiences in that reality then reinforce the original programming, creating an endless feedback loop. This continues until, and this is the key to everything, you become aware enough of the loop to observe it without judgment and deliberately, consciously introduce a new frequency into the system. But let's be crystal clear. You cannot brute force your way out of this loop. You can't overpower years of subconscious conditioning with a few minutes of visualization or a list of affirmations taped to your mirror. That's why so many people feel so frustrated with manifestation practices, because they're working at the surface level, while the true mechanism of creation operates in the deep, silent realms beneath. A true quantum shift requires coherence. It requires the beautiful alignment of your conscious desires with your subconscious beliefs and your embodied emotional state. It requires tuning your entire being to a new frequency, not just thinking new thoughts, but feeling new emotions, practicing new behaviors, and embodying a new identity. And this is where most people stop, right on the very edge of transformation, but unable to cross the threshold because they are still energetically entangled with the frequency of their old self. But you do not have to stop here. You do not have to keep looping through the same reality. You can learn to recognize the patterns, to disentangle your energy from the familiar, and to broadcast a new signal so coherently that the quantum field has no choice but to reflect it back to you as a new and beautiful experience. So, how do we do that? How do we recognize the exact moment when we're about to loop back into our old frequency? And how do we use that moment as a portal to shift into a new one? That is the crucial next step in this journey, and it's exactly where we are headed next. We've established how this quantum loop sustains itself, powered by the silent, automatic programming of your subconscious mind and your body's conditioned emotional state. So, how do we break it? The very first step is learning to recognize the precise moment where everything can change, or where everything is destined to repeat. This moment rarely arrives announced. In fact, It often arrives disguised as your greatest frustration, as a confusing sense of being stuck, or as the subtle, unsettling feeling that nothing is moving at all. But here lies the beautiful paradox. That very sensation of stagnation, that rising tension just before you feel like giving up, is often the exact moment you are closest to a true quantum shift. You begin to feel emotionally stretched, as if you are standing on a threshold between two different versions of yourself. One part of you is longing for expansion, reaching for new possibilities, for the manifestation of the life you've so clearly envisioned. The other part of you is gripping tightly, desperately, to the known, to the safe, to the familiar patterns that have defined your existence up until this very point. This internal tug-of-war is not a sign of failure. It is a hallmark of the quantum shift process. It's profoundly uncomfortable, yes, but it's also a definitive sign that you are exactly where you need to be. At this critical juncture, most people make one of two choices. They retreat, collapsing back into their old vibrational baseline and repeating the same reality yet again. Or they choose to lean into the discomfort, recognizing it not as a problem, but as a powerful signal that they are standing on the threshold of something profoundly different. The choice you make right here, in this liminal space, determines whether you continue looping or whether you finally shift. There is also a physiological marker that often accompanies this moment. Your body will resist. You might suddenly feel an inexplicable fatigue, a tension in your shoulders, a hum of anxiety, a deep restlessness, or even mild, flu-like symptoms. This is your nervous system processing the energetic dissonance between your old, familiar identity and the new, higher frequency you are beginning to inhabit. Your body has been chemically conditioned to the stress, the limitations, and the emotional habits of your previous reality. Moving beyond that conditioning requires a period of adjustment, a kind of vibrational detox. It is essential to understand that this discomfort is not a sign that you are doing it wrong. On the contrary, it is undeniable evidence that you are successfully disrupting the loop. The system is reacting not to harm you, but to protect the old, familiar paradigm. If you interpret this discomfort as failure, you will retreat. If you recognize it as a necessary and temporary part of the process, you will persist and you will shift. Let's make this even more practical. Imagine you're in the process of manifesting a new, loving relationship. You've been doing the inner work, setting intentions, and aligning your actions. But then, out of nowhere, an old, powerful fear surfaces. What if I get hurt again? What if I'm not really good enough for this? That fear immediately triggers familiar behaviors. You pull back, you become distant, you find flaws where there are none. You settle. The loop is powerfully reactivating itself. But what if, in that precise moment, instead of defaulting to the old behavior, you simply paused? What if you recognized the fear not as an absolute truth, but as a ghost, a residue of your previous frequency? What if you chose, in that moment, to breathe, to regulate your nervous system, to stay present with the discomfort without collapsing into its story? That is the moment of the quantum shift, not when you force the new reality, But when you stop automatically reacting to the old one, another clear sign that you are on the edge of a shift is the emergence of synchronicity. Not just the random appearance of external signs, but the subtle, beautiful alignment of your internal and external realities. You might notice recurring numbers, symbolic dreams, unexpected opportunities that seem to fall into your lap, or uncanny moments where your thoughts seem to manifest almost instantly. These are indications from the field that your vibrational signal is becoming more coherent, more aligned with the potential reality you are calling in. However, these signs alone are not enough. They are invitations, not guarantees. The real question is, how will you respond when they appear? Will you trust the unfolding, even when it feels unfamiliar? Or will you retreat to the perceived safety of your old patterns? The quantum shift requires you to stay in that liminal space, the in-between, long enough for the new frequency to stabilize. This is perhaps the most challenging part of the entire process, because it demands faith without immediate evidence, action without certainty, and presence without guarantees. But here's the beautiful paradox. It is precisely within that space of uncertainty that the quantum field begins to reorganize itself around your new, coherent frequency. The old reality starts to dissolve, not because you forced it away, but because you stopped feeding it with your attention, your fear, and your habitual responses. You have created a vibrational vacuum, and the field responds by filling it with the reality that is a perfect match to your new coherence. So, if you are noticing these signs, if your old patterns are resurfacing with intensity, if your body is resisting, if synchronicities are appearing, if you feel emotionally stretched between who you've been and who you are becoming, know this with all your heart: you are not failing. You are shifting. In the next section, we will explore exactly how to move through this moment of transition with grace and precision. We'll discuss the specific, practical actions that allow you to stop reacting to the old frequency and start truly embodying the new one, turning the quantum shift from a confusing concept into your lived reality. Take a deep breath. You are so much closer than you think. So, how do you shift? Not in theory, not someday, but right now, here in this sacred space between the old self and the one you are ready to become. The answer may surprise you, because everything in our cultural conditioning tells us to push harder, to do more, to fix, and to force. But in the quantum model, creation doesn't happen through force. It happens through frequency, and frequency is not something you do, it's something you are. To shift into a new reality, you don't need to create the future you want. You need to tune into it, because in the quantum field, that future version of you already exists. It's not a fantasy. It's not a distant potential. It is a concrete reality. A version of you vibrating at a specific frequency that you have simply not yet stabilized into. So, the question becomes, how do you stabilize into a new frequency? How do you stop reacting to the old loop and begin embodying a new, coherent signal? First, it starts with the body. Most people try to shift their mindset while completely ignoring their physiology. But your body is the broadcasting tower of your energy. If your nervous system is dysregulated, If your body is still chemically conditioned to respond with fear, tension, self-protection, or urgency, it will override any new thought you try to implant. This is why you can know the right thing, say the right thing, and still feel utterly stuck. The real shift happens when your nervous system becomes coherent with the reality you are manifesting. That means you need to teach your body how to feel safe in unfamiliar emotions, peace, expansion, joy, abundance, especially if it has spent years normalizing anxiety, contraction, scarcity, and doubt. So, here is your first practice. Instead of trying to affirm your way into your future self, feel your way into it. Close your eyes for a moment and bring to mind the version of you who already lives in the reality you desire. Don't just focus on what they have, but on how they feel. What is the emotional flavor, the inner tone of that version of you? Is it calm, confident, grateful, radiant, anchored? Now, gently invite that emotional tone into your body, right now, not for performance, not as the trick, but as an act of training, teaching your nervous system how to stabilize in that new frequency. This is not about faking it. It's about rehearsing a new way of being until your system begins to recognize it as safe and familiar. Do it slowly, gently, without force. Even 5 seconds of feeling genuinely, authentically different can begin to interrupt the old loop. 5 seconds of true coherence is more powerful than 5 hours of mental struggle. Second, learn to observe without collapsing. This means becoming the compassionate witness of your old patterns without identifying with them. When an old fear surfaces, instead of panicking or repressing it, simply watch it. When you notice the reactive, limiting thought, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, does this thought come from the version of me I am shifting out of, or the one I am shifting into? This single moment of conscious observation is the bridge. It's where your true power lives. The more you can witness the old programming without collapsing into its drama, the more space you create for a different, more empowered signal to emerge. Third, disengage from the energy of urgency. The quantum field is timeless. When you feel desperate, frantic, or rushed to manifest something, your body is broadcasting a powerful signal of lack and disconnection. Even if your mind is visualizing the desired outcome, slow down. You do not need to chase what is already yours in the field. You need to become an energetic match for it. Remember, reality doesn't shift when you try harder. It shifts when your frequency no longer supports the old. One powerful shift you can make today. Stop asking for proof. Stop desperately needing signs that it's working. When you look for proof too soon, you are signaling doubt to the field. Instead, try this. Treat the lack of external evidence as a test of your new embodiment. Smile to yourself when it doesn't look like it's working on the outside, because that's when you know you're truly starting to anchor a deeper, more resilient frequency on the inside. So much of manifestation isn't about getting more. It's about removing interference, removing the noise, the tension, the urgency, and the old expectations that keep you bound to what no longer fits. You don't have to build the new you from scratch. You just have to stop reinforcing the one you've outgrown. You are not becoming someone new. You are remembering who you already are, beneath all the layers of fear, doubt, and repetition. This shift is not linear. It doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like stillness. Sometimes it feels like contraction. But if you stay coherent, if you keep returning to the signal of your future self, again and again, even quietly, even subtly, the quantum field will begin to respond in ways you could never have forced into existence. Because the field doesn't respond to your timeline, it responds to your alignment. And alignment isn't a mindset, it is a vibrational home. So, let me ask you now, if you're feeling this shift happening, if you know you're in that space between, if something in your body is awakening as you listen to this, I invite you to comment below, I am ready to shift. Not just because I asked, but because this is your moment to claim it, to speak from your new self, to anchor a new frequency in the field, not just with thoughts, but with the power of resonance. And now, we're almost there. In the final section, we'll bring it all together. You'll learn how to walk with this new coherence, how to live this shift day by day, and how to embody it so completely that you become the frequency. And the field has no choice but to mirror your new reality. You've come this far, you've seen how the loop sustains itself, and you've learned that the quantum field doesn't resist your desires, but faithfully reflects the frequency you consistently broadcast. Not what you want, but what you are. And now, here you are, standing on the edge of a new reality. The threshold isn't out there somewhere in your future. It's right here, in this present moment, as you decide to embody a different frequency, to move beyond reaction and repetition, and to become the conscious creator of your reality. Let's be clear about something. The quantum shift is not a one-time, dramatic event. More often, it's a quiet, subtle accumulation of micro-decisions, tiny moments where you choose to observe instead of react, to soften instead of tense, to trust instead of panic. Each time you choose presence over programming, alignment over urgency, you are shifting. You are stepping out of the loop and into the field where new realities can collapse into form. Not through effort, but through resonance. Your future is not something you chase. It is something you tune into. It's a frequency you stabilize in so consistently that the field has no choice but to organize itself around your new signal. This is what it means to live as your quantum self. The loop ends when you stop feeding it, when you stop rehearsing the same inner conversations and entertaining the same doubts. The shift happens when you allow those old patterns to dissolve, not through force, but through the power of non-resistance. And here's the most beautiful part. You don't have to do this perfectly. The field doesn't require perfection. It only requires consistency, coherence, and the willingness to return, again and again, to the signal of your future self, even and especially when your external reality hasn't caught up yet. Can you hold the signal of abundance when your bank account still reflects scarcity? Can you stay aligned with love when you still feel lonely? This is where most people give up, but you know better now. You know the shift happens first in the invisible, and only later manifests in the visible. So let me ask you, as we close this journey together, Are you willing to keep broadcasting the new signal? Even when the old loop tries to pull you back, are you willing to walk as the person who has already shifted? Even before the world reflects it back to you, because that's the only real question left. If you will, then you have already shifted more than you realize. The field is already responding. Breathe that in, let it settle, let the knowing of your power deepen, not as an idea, but as an embodied truth. You are not a victim of your reality, you are its creator. If this journey has resonated with you, if you felt seen and expanded, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, not just to watch videos, but to stay connected to a space that supports your evolution and your alignment. This is more than content. It's a community of quantum creators, just like you. So, hit that subscribe button, and let's keep shifting together. The loop ends here. The shift begins now. Welcome to your new frequency.